Many people dream about moving to Alaska or have it high on their bucket list and are not sure if they will ever make this dream become a reality. And don't get me wrong, many of these reasons are good reasons to move there, such as longing for adventure and loving the outdoors or wanting to be self-reliant and independent. It is the last frontier after all. But some of these exact same reasons people dream of moving there are why many people leave Alaska as well. Alaska's population peaked in 2016 at an estimated 746,874, which is the highest it's been since receiving statehood. However, the state continues to have more people leaving than arriving, and 2020 was the 5th year in a row of negative net migration. I am sure there are many reasons why people are deciding to leave, and we probably aren't going to mention all of them here today. But here is some food for thought you should probably, well, definitely consider before packing your bags and heading north. Who knows, maybe I could save you a trip. Everyone always talks about the darkness of Alaskan winters, and sure they are bad, but we should also talk about the daylight in summer as well. The darkness is enough to drive anyone mad. But I also think a big part of the problem people have is adjusting from the very long summer days to the very long winter nights. The amount of sun varies depending on where you are. For example, in Anchorage the longest day of the year has 19 hours of daylight. If you go farther north to, say, Fairbanks from mid-May to mid-July, the sun is out shining all day long for a full 24 hours, also known as the midnight sun. Sounds great, right? Well, not exactly. This is a double-edged sword. Winter in Anchorage gets around 6 hours of daylight per day. Believe it or not, this makes Anchorage the sunniest city in the U.S. Now, just because there's a lot of sun doesn't mean it's all that warm, because trust me, it's definitely not. If you go far enough north, say all the way to the Arctic Ocean to Utqiagvik, formerly known as Barrow, don't ask me why they changed the name. In the summer they can have 80 days where the sun doesn't set, and a full 67 days in winter where it's completely dark. For 99% of people that's just too extreme. For me, I need nighttime to go to sleep, and a normal amount of sunshine to not feel all doom and gloom all the time. But hey, to each their own. Now obviously there's an elephant in the room that we need to address: the cold. For some people this won't be a problem, but for the vast majority the weather is just extreme. The weather does vary based on what region of the state you are looking at, but overall, it is cold and harsh. In southeast Alaska it is very wet and snowy, with much higher amounts of precipitation. And in the interior, there is lots of snow and it's extremely cold, with temperatures regularly below 0 degrees Fahrenheit and often down to -30 or 40 degrees. These are not temperatures I would enjoy living in, and many people actually freeze to death every year across the state. Sure, you do get a full 3 to 4 months with long sunny days, but even then, it is still not very warm, with the average temperature only around 65 degrees Fahrenheit. You will really have to love layering and wearing winter clothes to enjoy it up there. For many this is not a problem, myself being included. But for those of you who are anti-gun, or maybe just don't feel comfortable around guns, then this is not the state for you. Across the state, 61.7% of residents report owning guns, ranking Alaska third among all states in per capita firearm ownership. Pretty much anywhere in the state you go, there will be lots of people with guns, and I'm sure sometimes this can cause problems, but that is just the way it is, and I don't think it will be changing anytime soon. Big animals are everywhere, especially bears. Every kind of bear you can think of: brown, black, grizzly, and yes, even polar bears. Around 98% of the brown bear population in the U.S. is in Alaska, and 70% of the population in North America. And there are other big animals to look out for too, like moose, wolves, caribou, elk, and even wolverines. And roadkill is everywhere. Well, everywhere there are actually roads, I guess. They even have a roadkill list. Yep, you put your name on this list and they basically raffle off any roadkill that's been reported, probably to stop people from hitting moose with their car to skirt getting a license to kill one or something. Now, if you don't want to feel like you need to be on alert every time you walk out your front door just in case you bump into a moose or a bear, then maybe think twice about moving. Now, a running joke in Alaska is that the state bird is the mosquito. There are millions of them, maybe even billions. Actually, I just checked, there are trillions. That's right, trillions. There are as many as 35 known species in the state. There are even some species that are out when there's still snow on the ground. I think that was enough info for me to stay where I am. This might not be a big deal to some, probably mostly women, but it's very noticeable. If you are heading north as a young man looking to make his stamp on the world, just know you might be stuck doing it alone for a while. Alaska has the worst men-to-female ratio in the U.S., depending on how you look at it, with about 110 men for every 100 females. So if you are thinking about starting your dream life and meeting the girl of your dreams once you get here, think again. There will be lots of competition. Getting around in Alaska is no joke. Alaska is by far the biggest state in the United States at 665,384 square miles, with Texas coming in second and California third at 268,596 and 163,695 square miles respectively. But it's not just size alone that makes Alaska so difficult to get around. From its geography to its road network, or lack thereof, in many places, that make this great state notoriously difficult to get from one place to another. Most of the state is just vast, empty wilderness that's impossible to navigate other than by boat or airplane or snow machine. Juneau, the capital for example, has no roads in or out. The only way to go there is by boat or plane. Now without looking this up, I'm gonna guess it's the only state capital that has no roads in or out. So it's no surprise that about 1 in 78 Alaskans has a pilot's license, which is 6 times more pilots per capita than the rest of the United States. And it's not just getting around the state that poses difficulty, it's also getting to Alaska and leaving to go home or for a vacation. If you want to drive even just from the Canadian border in Washington state in say Blaine, to the first town that I could find that has road access in Alaska, say Haines, it's 1,539 miles. And that's just from the border. I'm sure lots of people do drive up, but I'm gonna venture out and say most people fly. But flying to Alaska is expensive. And this usually would consist of 2 flights, probably a flight to Seattle and a final flight to your destination. Taking all of this into account, you probably now realize unless your family is already in Alaska, then this will make visiting and spending time with them a big effort. After you know that getting to Alaska takes effort, it just makes sense why everything in Alaska is more expensive than a lot of other places. The logistics of shipping everything pretty much to the end of the line adds cost. Pretty much any necessities you need like groceries and household items are gonna cost you. I have heard from Alaskans about the insane prices like half a watermelon costing $40 or cheese for as much as $15, and gasoline is always more expensive than many other places in the US. Another problem is many companies won't ship to Alaska, like IKEA, and yes, there are other ways to get things there. There's a company in Anchorage called Shop and Deliver that will get things from companies that won't ship. Luckily Amazon does deliver, but they definitely do not do overnight delivery, and most places that do ship have added on extra costs or the shipping cost is very expensive and can take several weeks to arrive. As I'm sure you would have guessed, heating and utilities can be a big expense due to the constant cold. People do have to get creative and find unique ways to get costs down. Many people heat their house with wood stoves, hunt and fish to save on meat costs, so it can be done. Now, like most people who are thinking about moving, they will need to work to make a living. And depending on your chosen profession, this might be a big problem or this might not be too bad. If you have a trade like a plumber or electrician or heading north to work in oil and gas or fishing, you might be okay. But for the most part, jobs can be difficult to come by, especially if you are dreaming of moving somewhere remote. You will need to give this some serious consideration because, as we know, Alaska is not cheap. Last thing we are going to talk about today is crime. Alaska has a higher crime rate than the national average, and certain serious crimes in particular you might want to take note of. Crimes like violent crime, murder, and arson are high in Alaska, and have all increased quite a bit in the last few years. With everywhere being so remote, it can be difficult for police to manage, and 911 calls can take a long time to respond to. And the fact everyone and their grandma is packing heat can make the place feel like the Wild West. One crime in particular is much higher than the national average, but I have heard if I mention it by name it can cause problems for me on YouTube. So we will just say that the amount of people receiving unwanted attention from the opposite sex in the state is high, with it happening 118.4 times per 100,000 residents. If you are a female looking at the male-to-female ratio and thinking great, this is something you might want to consider. If you are still thinking about moving to Alaska, then good luck to you. I wish you all the best. Let us know your thoughts on the 10 reasons not to move to Alaska in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more tips on top retirement spots or places to move in global rankings. Hit the bell and we'll see you in the next adventure.